Okay, welcome to today's lesson about Empedocles. Empedocles came obviously after the previous two philosophers, Heraclitus and Parmenides. And you'll see now that Parmenides made a challenge to philosophers with his idea that nothing can come from nothing. And Empedocles agreed with this argument that nothing can come from nothing, and I think that perhaps you'll agree with it too. I mean, please write under the video and make a comment. Do you think it's true that nothing can come from nothing and that nothing can go to nothing as well? So Empedocles took this challenge and he accepted that as a serious argument, and he decided that this means that the four elements, which they were still using, earth, air, fire and water, he called the four elements the roots of all things. The roots of all things. And he said that these roots must be eternal. Why? Well, because nothing can come from nothing and nothing can go to nothing. So these roots can't just disappear out of existence, just as we currently think that atoms don't just disappear out of existence. And they can't just be brought into existence. How could that be? From nothing at all, from empty space. And so he considered these roots to be eternal. And I think that this idea continues into the atomists. So, in his opinion, there is no birth and death. Birth and death, okay, in our perception maybe we perceive birth and death, but really people are just made of the four elements in a certain proportion. And when these four elements, which are attracted together under one force, the force of love, when they're attracted together we have life, we have a human being. And when those roots change places and perhaps lose their attraction, they're not attracted together, they go back into fire, air, earth and water. They just change the ratios of their elements. It's not death in a strict sense. When you look at the whole of life, really things are just changing places. So this is very similar to modern atomism, the idea that really the elements, the molecules of the body, the atoms are just going into different structures, and that's what death is. It's not something which is an experience anymore. It's just a reshuffling of all the elements in a certain structure. Okay, so he believed that there were two main forces in the universe, love and strife, which basically is a bit like hate. Love is the force of attraction, and strife is the force of repulsion. Now this is very important. It seems to me that he's perhaps making a moral question out of a physical, out of something physical. He could see attraction and repulsion of the elements, the roots of all things, in the physical world, and he decided to call these two forces love and hate. He made them into kind of human emotions, perhaps. But nonetheless, you could perhaps see it as just the forces of attraction and repulsion, which again is very similar to modern atomism. We have these two forces of the electromagnetic forces holding the atom together, and they're forces of attraction and repulsion. So he made this the answer to his question, a question which had concerned Heraclitus and Parmenides and all of the previous philosophers. What's the relationship between the one and the many? Where does the many come from? Where does the one come from? If everything is the same and there's no empty space, where do all these different forms come from? And Empedocles answered with love and strife. He saw there being two forces in the whole universe. A force of love, which brought everything together and made it into one. And this was a vortex motion that he saw, much like in a galaxy or a universe. And love was the attractive force which brought it all into the same thing. It brought all of the elements, the four elements, together. It attracted them all together into a super kind of one in the middle of the vortex. But at the same time, we have other forces, the forces of strife which are repelling, which are moving all of the elements away from each other. So they're separating them just into fire, a big huge fire, a big huge piece of air, a big huge piece of water. That's separating them all into the many. So we have strife separating the one into the many, and love uniting the many back into the one. We have these two forces, and the universe is just an endless cycle of these two forces. Okay, so he actually believed a few things because of this. He believed that there was a previous golden age and that they are at this point in the cycle. They're going towards a more and more hateful place perhaps, but things are being destroyed into more and more different parts. The elements are being separated out into their separate elements. Now that means that he believed there was a golden age in the past, and I want you to wonder, well, I'll answer that question. Do you believe there was some kind of golden age in the past? It's a common idea. And that everything was getting worse. All the hatred and war that was going on at the time was a manifestation of strife, separating out the elements. Okay, so again we have an endless cycle, much like in Heraclitus, and you will see this later. He also is very famous for being a vegetarian. He actually believed that people had they were reincarnated, their soul was reincarnated, and they had lots of different experiences. But he believed that because we were on this part of the circle, the gods, because we were originally gods, we were tainted and we started eating the flesh of animals. And because of this, because we started eating the flesh of animals, we were punished. And we were punished to walk the world in flesh form as people. So he really didn't like eating meat. What are your thoughts about vegetarianism? Do you think eating flesh, eating animals, is immoral in some kind of way? Empedocles certainly thought so. And lastly, he's very famous for perhaps saying something which predicted evolution, or Darwin's theory. Now, why is this? He actually said that because we're coming from the one, he believed that all people in the past were born with perhaps 4 arms and a head on the back of their own head, a face on the back of their head. In all sorts of ways. People were born with bull's heads instead of human heads. There was this big mixture of limbs and bodies. And he suggests that over time, simple chance has meant that humans have developed, because it's much more of an advantage to have hands just here and not hands on the back of your neck or whatever. So he says it's just simple chance, and it's just because that we grew to be suitable to our environment. Now this is important because it sounds a little bit like Darwin's theory, obviously different for several reasons, but what he's trying to do is give a non-teleological origin of man. Non-teleological. What does that mean? It means that he doesn't want to use he says it's just down to chance. What it means is our development is just down to simple chance, that it's not directed by some kind of God, it's not directed by some kind of conscious force or some kind of intelligent design. It's not. It's just blind chance that we have this form and that other animals have their own form. It's blind chance, and it's because they're suited to their environment like that. Now, what do you think about this idea? I admire evolutionary theory for trying to be so non-teleological. I admire it for giving an attempt. But I don't know if Darwin's theory is enough to explain why life suddenly appeared. I don't believe scientists have managed to make life suddenly appear in a test tube, and so it's still a big question. Of course, they say over millions of years. Who knows? Anything can happen over millions and millions of years, and so perhaps it is blind chance. But what do you think? Do you think that life just started from blind chance? Do you think that people were many millions of years ago different animals, that we had different forms, that our origin was in different forms. I went to the Natural History Museum recently and I saw that a whale was related to a fox, according to the evolutionary biologists. What do you think about ideas like this? Do you think that they're crazy, or do you think that they're as crazy as Empedocles with bull's heads on people, or do you think that they have a lot of merit? So please discuss under the video. Thanks for watching, and please join me soon for Anaxagoras. Thank you.